pregnant homeless woman humiliated for asking for scraps. What the Millionaire CEO did next. That Tuesday night's rain wasn't just water falling from the sky. It was a punishment. Thick, icy, and endless. It hammered against the city asphalt as if trying to cleanse the streets of everything society preferred not to see. For those inside, it was cozy sleeping weather. For Clara, it was a torment that had already lasted hours. At 24, Clara carried a weight far heavier than her age suggested. Her belly, stretched to the limit of an 8-month pregnancy, felt like a ton. Her legs were swollen, her skin marked by the elastic of old, soaked stockings. She walked with difficulty along the historic brick walkways of the elite Beacon Hill district, clutching her stomach with both hands, an instinctive and desperate attempt to shield her child from the bone-chilling cold. It had been 2 days since Clara had eaten anything other than a piece of stale bread a kind baker had given her the morning before. Dizziness came in waves, making the world spin and the streetlights blur into yellow smudges. Clara's life hadn't always been this way. Months ago, she had a clean maid's uniform, a sweet-smelling room in a boarding house, and simple dreams. But misfortune, when it strikes the poor, tends to arrive hand in hand with other tragedies. First, the unexpected dismissal when her belly started to show. Then, the baby's father, who swore eternal love right up until responsibility knocked, pulling a vanishing act without a trace. Finally, the eviction. Without a paycheck, without a partner, and without family in the big city, Clara was pushed to the margins, becoming invisible. But the baby didn't know this. She moved restlessly inside, strong kicks that stole Clara's breath. "Easy, my love," she whispered, her voice hoarse and shaky. "Mommy's going to get something, I promise." On the other side of that soaked reality, separated only by a wall of tempered glass and velvet curtains, existed a world where hunger was merely a prelude to pleasure. Aureus was the kind of place where the price of a single appetizer could pay Clara's rent for 3 months. Inside, the air was climate-controlled. The scent was of black truffles, aged wines, and imported perfumes. And overseeing it all was Lucas. At 33, Lucas was the image of success. His bespoke suit was tailored by an Italian master. His hair was impeccably cut, and his bank account accumulated numbers most people would never see. He was the heir to a gastronomic empire, the CEO whom everyone respected and feared. But if anyone looked deep into Lucas's eyes, they would see the light was extinguished. He stood on the mezzanine, observing the crowded dining hall below. People laughed, toasted, celebrated deals and anniversaries. Lucas felt only a deafening silence within his chest. It had been 2 years. 2 years since the car accident that, on a sunny afternoon, took his wife, Helena, and the child she was expecting, who never got to be born. Since that day, Lucas operated on autopilot. He woke up, worked with robotic efficiency, increased company profits, and returned to an empty, silent mansion. The luxury around him felt like an offense to his pain. He watched the smiling customers and thought, with bitter cynicism, "They don't know anything. They think this stuff matters." That night, the emptiness was particularly heavy. He thought about leaving, taking his car and driving aimlessly, but something kept him there, watching the dining room like a ghost in his own castle. It was then that the entrance door opened. Clara didn't want to go inside. She knew this wasn't her place, but the dizziness was so intense that she had to lean on the gilded handle, and the weight of her body pushed the door inward. The entryway bell chimed, soft and discreet, but to Clara, it sounded like an alarm. The contrast was violent. The blast of the heater hit her wet face. The smell of hot food invaded her nostrils, and her stomach rumbled so loudly she feared they would hear it. She was drenched. The maternity dress, donated and threadbare, clung to her body, highlighting the enormous belly. Water dripped from her hair onto the Persian rug in the entrance. The restaurant, which had been buzzing with conversation, gradually fell silent. One table stopped talking, then another, until an uncomfortable silence took over the room. Everyone was looking at the door. Everyone was looking at the intruder. Clara tried to retreat, but her legs failed. She just wanted leftovers, something destined for the garbage. "Please," she said, her voice almost inaudible. From a large table in the corner, occupied by 4 well-dressed young men, sons of shareholders and heirs of fortunes who had never worked a day in their lives, came the first reaction. And it wasn't pity. "Look at that," one of them said, laughing loudly. "Did Aureus become a shelter now? What is that wet dog smell?" The others at the table snickered, cruel laughter devoid of any empathy. They found the scene grotesque, a stain on their perfect evening. Clara felt her face burn. The shame was worse than the hunger. She lowered her head, tears mixing with the rainwater on her face. She tried to ignore the young men and looked at the nearest table. There sat a distinguished, gray-haired gentleman, eating alone. He looked serious, respectable. He reminded Clara of the grandfather she never had. In an impulse of pure need, she took 2 faltering steps toward him and extended her trembling hand. "Sir, for the love of God, just a little food. Whatever you don't want anymore. It's for my baby." The man paused with his fork halfway to his mouth. He wiped his mouth with his white linen napkin, looked Clara up and down with an expression of profound disgust, as if she were an insect that had landed on his plate. "Madam," he said, in a cold, cutting voice, "your presence and your odor are destroying my appetite. You should be ashamed of yourself for existing like this, and leave immediately before I call the police." The words were like knife stabs. Be ashamed of yourself for existing. Clara felt the ground disappear. The last drop of hope that kept her standing snapped. She didn't have the strength to argue or even to feel anger. She only felt infinite sorrow. She nodded slowly, humiliated, and turned toward the door. She shuffled her feet, ready to go back into the rain, ready to give up everything, ready to lie down on the pavement and wait for the end. The dining room started to murmur again. The rich young men laughed once more at the gray-haired gentleman's victory. "Stay right there," the voice thundered across the restaurant, coming from above. It wasn't a request. It was a command that instantly stopped the clinking of silverware. Lucas was descending the mezzanine stairs with a speed no one had ever seen from him. His steps were firm, heavy. His face, usually emotionless, was contorted by an emotion he thought was dead. Rage, indignation, and something deeper, the pain of witnessing human cruelty so closely. He crossed the dining hall like a hurricane, ignoring the startled looks of the waiters and managers. He walked straight past the table of young heirs, giving them a glare so severe that the laughter died in their throats. He passed the gray-haired gentleman without even deigning to look at him. He reached Clara just as her hand was on the door handle to leave. Lucas took hold of her arm, not with brute force but with a protective firmness. "Don't leave," he said, his breathing slightly ragged. "You are not going back out into that rain." Clara flinched, expecting to be driven out, expecting another shout. But when she lifted her eyes, she saw the face of the most elegant man in the place. And in his eyes, there was no disgust. There was a desperate urgency. Lucas turned to the dining hall. The silence was absolute. He raised his voice so that everyone there, from the dishwasher to the wealthiest customer, could hear. "I'm going to have the finest meal this restaurant offers prepared for this lady. And if anyone here is bothered by her presence, your check is on the house. But I ask you to leave right now. In my establishment, hunger is not a joke." The gray-haired gentleman turned red and lowered his eyes to his plate. The young men were speechless. Lucas turned back to Clara, gently releasing her arm. "Come with me." He guided her not to a hidden table in the back, but to one of the best tables, near the fireplace, where the warmth was comforting. He pulled out the chair for her to sit. Clara was trembling, water streaming from her clothes onto the expensive velvet upholstery. "Sir, I'm going to ruin everything," she stammered. "To hell with the upholstery," Lucas responded. "Sit down." Then Lucas did something he hadn't done in years. He took off his designer jacket, threw it over an empty chair, and began unbuttoning the cuffs of his white shirt, rolling up his sleeves. He looked at the maitre d', who was paralyzed. "Bring her dry towels and hot tea. Now." And to everyone's surprise, Lucas didn't give orders to the kitchen staff. He walked in himself. The kitchen team parted, startled. The boss never cooked. But that night, Lucas grabbed a skillet. His hands, which had only signed checks and contracts for so long, returned to chopping, sautéing, and seasoning. He prepared a rich, hot, nutritious risotto, using the tenderest cut of meat in the house. He poured all the emotion dammed up in his throat into that dish. When he returned to the dining room carrying the steaming plate, Clara was already wrapped in white towels, holding a cup of tea with both hands, still incredulous. Lucas set the plate in front of her. "Eat," he said, pulling up a chair to sit across from her. Slowly, Clara looked at the food. The smell was the best thing she had ever experienced. She picked up the fork, her hand trembling so much the food almost fell. She brought the first forkful to her mouth. The taste made her close her eyes. A solitary tear rolled down, not of sadness, but of pure relief. Lucas watched. He saw her voracious hunger, but he also saw the dignity with which she tried to eat, even in desperation. He looked at her belly, prominent beneath the towels. "How far along?" he asked, his voice low. 8 months and 2 weeks, Clara replied, swallowing. "It's a girl." Lucas felt a punch to the gut. His wife had been 8 months pregnant when the accident happened. It had been a boy, but the timing was the same. He looked at Clara and, for a second, the image of his wife superimposed itself onto this unknown woman. He couldn't let her leave. Not tonight. Not like this. When Clara finished, scraping the plate clean, she looked up at him with eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you, sir. You saved my life tonight. God bless you. I should go now." She made a move to stand up, but Lucas shook his head. "Do you have somewhere to go?" Clara hesitated. She didn't know how to lie. "There's an underpass near the—" "No," Lucas cut her off. "You are not going to any underpass." He called the night manager and requested the keys to the administrative annex. It was a small apartment behind the restaurant property, formerly used for manager resting quarters, but currently vacant and clean. It had a bed, a bathroom with a hot shower, and a small kitchenette. "You'll stay here," Lucas said, in a tone that accepted no refusal, "until the baby is born. But sir, I have no way to pay. I can't accept. You'll want something in return, and I have nothing?" Clara recoiled, the fear of a woman living on the street speaking louder. Rich men didn't give things away for free. Lucas looked into her eyes, serious and sad. "I don't want anything from you, Clara. I just want you to sleep in a dry bed and for that child not to be born in the gutter. Please accept." Clara saw the truth in his eyes. She saw that this powerful man was, in some way, just as broken as she was, and she accepted. In the weeks that followed, an unlikely routine settled into Aureus. Clara, settled in the annex, watched her health return. The swelling in her legs decreased, color returned to her face. But Clara wasn't a woman to sit still and accept charity. By the 3rd day, she was already in the back kitchen, helping to peel potatoes, despite Lucas's protests. "I need to do something, Lucas," she said, already calling him by his first name, though still timidly. "My grandmother used to say that an idle mind is the devil's playground, and I need to earn my keep." Lucas, seeing her stubbornness, conceded. More than that, he liked it. Clara began organizing the dry goods and canned inventory with an impeccable logic that no college-educated manager had managed to apply. She offered simple suggestions. "Why don't we use the peels from these fruits to make jelly? It's a waste to throw them out." Lucas listened, and he admired her. Her presence began to change the sterile atmosphere of his office. In the mornings, before the restaurant opened, they shared coffee. Lucas, who previously only drank bitter espresso and read emails, now found himself eating buttered toast and listening to Clara talk about how she dreamed of being a cook, but life had led her to hotel cleaning. In return, one rainy afternoon, Lucas opened up. He talked about Helena. He talked about the crib that was never used. It was the first time in 2 years he had said his wife's name without wanting to break something. Clara listened in silence and, spontaneously, placed her hand over his. "She must be proud of you now, Lucas, for taking care of us." Clara's belly grew visibly. Lucas sometimes caught himself looking at her with a concern that wasn't managerial. He took her to a private doctor's appointment, paying out of his own pocket, and paced the waiting room nervously. When the doctor called the father to view the ultrasound, Clara flushed, but Lucas went in. He saw the little heart beating on the screen. Thump thump, thump thump. He left with tear-filled eyes. Life insisted on continuing, despite everything. The trust between them grew like a robust plant. Charity had turned into friendship, and friendship began to take on the contours of an improvised family, patched together with the shards left over from their former lives. The ultimate test came on a stormy night, much like the one where they met. The restaurant was already closed. Lucas was in the office reviewing accounts when he heard a scream coming from the annex. He ran. He crossed the patio in the rain without caring. He found Clara sitting on the bed, pale, clutching her stomach, breathing hard. "It's coming!" she cried, her eyes wide with panic. "It hurts so much, Lucas." Panic tried to consume Lucas. Memories of the hospital, of death, tried to paralyze him. But he looked at Clara. She was alone in the world. She only had him. He took a deep breath, swallowed his fear, and took control. He sat down beside her, took her hand, and began timing the contractions on his expensive wristwatch. "Breathe with me, Clara. Look at me. That's right." He stayed there for an hour. They were practice contractions, false labor, but painful. He wiped the sweat from her forehead with a cool towel. He spoke calming words, with a paternal tenderness he didn't even know he possessed. "I won't let anything happen to you," he promised, squeezing her hand. "Nor to the baby. I'm here." When the pain subsided and Clara fell asleep exhausted, Lucas didn't leave the bedside. He watched over her sleep. There, in the silence of the simple room, Lucas made a decision. This wasn't temporary anymore. He couldn't just let her leave after the child was born. He felt, for the first time in years, that he had a purpose. Protecting this woman and the life she carried had become his mission. He decided that the next morning he would speak to his lawyers. He would propose registering the child, or at least giving Clara a permanent, official position with stability. He would build a future where they wouldn't have to separate. As the rain beat against the window, Lucas smiled lightly, feeling a strange peace. He thought he was saving Clara, but in truth, she was saving him. What Lucas didn't know, as he planned this happy future, was that the eyes of envy never sleep. The lives of the two were now irremediably intertwined. But Lucas's kindness and Clara's rise were bothersome. And in the shadows of the restaurant, someone was already plotting to turn that dream into a nightmare, using Clara's past as a weapon. Have you ever felt that life gave you a second chance through an unexpected person? Or have you been that person in someone else's life? Clara and Lucas's story is just beginning, and the storm outside may have passed, but a much worse one is brewing inside the restaurant. Will the trust they built be strong enough to withstand a well-told lie? What would you do in Lucas's shoes? Would you believe Clara's dark past if proof was presented to you? Or would you trust what your heart says? Drop your answer here in the comments below. Backhand index pointing down. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the continuation. The next part will leave you breathless. The story continues in part 2. The morning sun entered through the cracks in the annex window, bringing a clarity that seemed to wash away the remnants of that frightening storm. Clara woke up feeling heavy, but, for the first time in months, safe. The mattress was soft, the sheets smelled of lavender, and there was no constant fear of being chased away by a guard or attacked by someone on the street. She touched her belly. The baby moved slowly, as if she, too, were enjoying the peace of this new refuge. Lucas kept his promise. He didn't send her away the next day or the next week. On the contrary, what began as an act of charity on a night of fury turned, day after day, into a cohabitation that neither of them knew they needed so desperately. Clara, A woman forged in the hardness of life couldn't accept anything for free. The gratitude she felt for Lucas overflowed in the form of work. If he gave her a roof, she would give him order. The annex, previously a dusty storage room for old papers and broken furniture, became a home. She cleaned, organized, and put garden flowers in a cup of water on the bedside table. But it was in the restaurant that the magic happened. Clara started timidly, helping to peel vegetables in the back, far from the customer's eyes. But her intelligence was keen, practical. She saw things that the tie-wearing managers with their expensive degrees didn't. One afternoon, Lucas found her separating lemon peels and celery stalks that were about to be thrown away. "What are you doing, Clara?" he asked, curious, stopping beside the stainless steel counter. Clara wiped her hands on her apron, afraid of getting scolded. "Mr. Lucas, this is money being thrown away. My grandma made a dry seasoning with these peels that made any cheap cut of meat taste great. And the stalks, they make a soup cream that could wake the dead." Lucas smiled, a genuine smile, one that creased the corners of his eyes, something his employees hadn't seen in a long time. "Then make it," he challenged. "Prepare it for the staff dinner tonight. If it's good, it goes on the menu." That night, the team ate in silence, savoring the soup. It was divine. Lucas tasted it and felt a warmth in his chest that didn't just come from the food. It came from the feeling of care. Clara didn't just cook. She nourished. From that day on, the invisible barrier between the unreachable boss and the sheltered beggar began to crumble. Lucas started seeking her company. He invented excuses to go to the back of the kitchen or stopped by the annex, just to see if the light bulb needed changing. Mornings became sacred. Before the lunch rush began, the two of them sat in the small office kitchenette. Lucas with his black coffee, Clara with her chamomile tea and milk. They talked, at first about trivial things, the weather, the price of tomatoes, the color of the walls, then about life. "Did you ever think about giving up, Clara?" Lucas asked once, watching her sew a button onto his shirt, something she insisted on doing. Clara paused the needle in the air and looked toward the window. "Every day, Mr. Lucas. When the rain soaked my cardboard box, when people looked away as if I were trash, I thought about closing my eyes and never opening them again. But then she'd kick." Clara stroked her huge belly. "She reminded me that I'm not just me anymore. I'm her home, and a home can't collapse." Lucas swallowed hard. The strength of this woman, so young and so wounded, shamed and inspired him. He, who had everything, felt weak in the face of pain. She, who had nothing, was a fortress. "I wish I'd had that strength," Lucas confessed, his voice thick. "When Helena left, collapsed, the house fell down, Clara, and I was buried in the rubble." Clara dropped the sewing and held his hand. Her hand was rough, calloused from hard work. His was soft, from a man who only signed papers. But the fit was perfect. "You aren't buried anymore, Lucas. You saw me. You saved me. He who saves one life saves the whole world, they say. You are rebuilding your house, brick by brick." In that moment, something shifted in the air. It wasn't spoken, it wasn't declared, but it was there. A tenderness that went beyond friendship. Lucas looked at Clara's lips, at her brown eyes full of sweetness, and felt his heart pound erratically, like a teenager's. He pulled away, frightened by the intensity of the feeling, but couldn't stop thinking about her for the rest of the day. Clara's belly was low. The 9th month had arrived. Lucas, seized by an overwhelming protective instinct, decided to make things official. He no longer wanted her to be a secret, a temporary guest. He wanted her and the baby to be part of his life, his company, his future. He prepared the paperwork. He would hire her as a supervisory assistant, with a formal contract, health insurance, and paid maternity leave. And in his heart, he planned something more, registering the girl, giving her his last name if Clara allowed it. He wanted to be the father that destiny had prevented him from being. But happiness, when it arrives in the lives of those who have suffered greatly, tends to bother those who live in darkness. Beatrice returned from her European vacation that week. general manager of Aureus, a woman of cold beauty and implacable competence. Beatrice had always considered the restaurant, and Lucas her property. She had been Lucas's college girlfriend, and though the romance ended years ago, she maintained the secret, obsessive hope that after his widowhood, she would reclaim her spot as queen beside the king. Upon entering the restaurant and seeing Clara, with her enormous belly and simple clothes, giving soft orders in the kitchen and laughing with Lucas in the office, Beatrice felt her blood run cold. It wasn't just jealousy, it was disgust. Beatrice's elitism wouldn't allow her to accept that a street vagrant, as she thought of her, would occupy the space she judged to be rightfully hers. "Who is this Lucas?" Beatrice asked, storming into the office, her expensive perfume fouling the air. Lucas didn't even look up from Clara's hiring papers. "This is Clara. She's been helping us and will be working with us permanently. Treat her with respect, Beatrice." Beatrice saw how Lucas looked at Clara. She saw the sparkle in his eyes, a sparkle she had tried to reignite for 2 years without success. And she realized the danger. That Beggar wasn't an employee. She was the woman who was healing Lucas's heart. "This won't stand," Beatrice thought, with a false smile on her red lips. "I will not lose my empire to a gutter rat." Beatrice's strategy was cruel and calculated. She knew Lucas's weak spot was trust. He had been emotionally betrayed in the past, and his wife's death had made him paranoid about being deceived or abandoned. Beatrice hired a shady private investigator. Her order was clear: find dirt, and if you can't find it, invent it. "I want this woman out of here before that child is born." The detective dug into Clara's life. He discovered she had fled a small town after her ex-boyfriend, a gambling addict, racked up enormous debts with loan sharks in her name. Clara fled to avoid being killed or forced to pay what she didn't owe. There was a confusing police report where the ex accused her of taking his money. It was a lie, of course, the defense of a scoundrel, but on paper, without context, it looked like a crime. Beatrice smiled as she read the dossier. It was perfect. Thief, con artist, opportunist. The words danced in her mind. But she needed more. She needed to catch her in the act. On a Friday afternoon, the day of supplier payments, Lucas, as usual, left an envelope with a high amount of cash in the office safe for emergency weekend expenses. Beatrice knew the code. All managers did. She waited for Lucas to leave for an external meeting. She waited for Clara to enter the office to drop off the inventory spreadsheets Lucas had requested. As soon as Clara left, Beatrice went in. Wearing thin gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints, she opened the safe, took the stack of notes, and hid it in her own purse. Then, she placed the fake dossier on Lucas's desk, right in the center, with a note. "So you know WH, or you really let into your home. With love and concern, Beatrice." When Lucas returned, the atmosphere in the restaurant was heavy. He entered the office whistling, happy because he was going to buy the baby's crib that weekend. His smile died when he saw the brown envelope on the desk. He read it. With every page, his face paled. Accused of felony theft. Fugitive. Involvement with loan sharks. Lucas's hands trembled. The old wound of distrust tore open, bleeding. Could it be? Was I really that foolish? Was she just after a roof and my money? Just then, Beatrice entered, with an expression of false anguish. "Lucas, something terrible has happened. The money in the safe is gone." Lucas jumped to his feet. "What?" "I went to grab it to pay the wine delivery man and it's empty." "Lucas, I saw Clara leaving here just now. I didn't want to believe it, but with this dossier that arrived..." Lucas's world spun. The pain of betrayal is a fast poison. He didn't rationalize. The anger, the fear of being made a fool of, the poorly healed grief, everything exploded. "Call Clara. Now!" he shouted. Clara entered the office smiling, her hand on her aching back. "You called Lucas?" The look she received was not that of the man who drank coffee with her. It was the gaze of the cold, distant CEO from the first night. "Where is the money, Clara?" he asked, his voice trembling with contained hatred. Clara froze. "Money? What money? What are you talking about? Lucas threw the dossier at her. The pages scattered on the floor. Don't play innocent. I know who you are. I know about your past, the police, the theft in your town. You ran away from there and came here to hide, taking advantage of my pity, my grief. Clara stared at the papers, stunned. Lucas, this is a lie. My ex. He was the one who stole, he was the one who lied. I ran away to survive. I never took anything from anyone. And the money from the safe? Lucas advanced a step, blinded by pain. $10,000 vanished today. Only you were here alone. Beatrice saw you leave. Are you going to deny that too? Clara looked at Beatrice, who was leaning against the door with a look of triumph disguised as sadness. Clara understood everything. The trap was set. And Lucas had fallen for it. What hurt Clara the most was not Beatrice's accusation. It was seeing the doubt in Lucas's eyes. After everything they had shared, after all the conversations, after he felt the baby kick. He believed a piece of paper and not her. Clara's pride, the only thing misery hadn't managed to steal, rose within her. She wasn't going to cry. She wasn't going to beg. If he didn't trust her, there was nothing left for her here. Clara bent down with difficulty, picked up the old fabric bag where she kept her few belongings, which was in a corner of the office. I didn't take your money, Lucas, and I thought you knew me. I thought we were family. Her voice failed on the last word. But I see that to you. I'm still just the beggar who asked for scraps. She took the annex key from her pocket and placed it gently on the desk. The sound of metal hitting the wood sounded like a gunshot in the silence of the room. Keep your money and your conscience. I prefer the street to spending 1 second more where my honesty isn't believed. Clara, wait. If you leave, Lucas began, but his own pride was also speaking loudly. He wanted her to explain, to prove it, but she was already turning away. Clara left. She crossed the restaurant floor with her head held high, though tears burned her eyes. The employees watched, confused. She pushed open the glass door. Outside, night was falling, and like a cruel omen, it began to drizzle. The cold immediately embraced her. Clara was alone again, 9 months pregnant, penniless, homeless, and with her heart broken into smaller pieces than when she arrived there. Lucas stayed in the office, breathless. The silence that settled was deafening. Beatrice approached, placing her hand on his shoulder. It was for the best, darling. She was a danger. You got rid of a problem. Should I order us a whiskey? Lucas sharply pulled away from her hand. Get out, Beatrice. I want to be alone. But Lucas, get out. Beatrice left, irritated but satisfied. The job was done. Lucas collapsed into the chair. He grabbed the bottle of whiskey he kept in his drawer and drank a mouthful straight from the neck. The liquid burned, but not as much as the pain in his chest. He looked at the key Clara had left. He looked at the empty chair where she used to sit. I did the right thing, he repeated to himself. She was a con artist. The evidence was right there. But his heart screamed, lie! It's a lie. Hours passed. The restaurant closed. Lucas remained there, in the dark, drunk and miserable. Doubt began to corrode his certainty. What if only you were here alone, he had said. But was she? Lucas remembered something only he knew. Months ago, suspicious of a cleaning employee, he had installed a micro camera inside the bookshelf, pointed directly at the safe. A camera that wasn't connected to the main security system that Beatrice monitored. It was an independent system that recorded to a local memory card. With trembling hands and a pounding heart, Lucas stood up. He walked to the bookshelf, fumbled behind the books, and pulled out the small camera. He connected the device to his computer. The screen lit up. The blue light illuminated Lucas's sweaty, desperate face. He searched for the recordings from that afternoon. He saw Clara entering. She placed the spreadsheets on the desk. She smiled at a photo of him that sat on the shelf. She rubbed her stomach, and she left. She didn't even go near the safe. Lucas felt violent nausea. He fast-forwarded the video. The door opened again. Beatrice entered. He saw, in high definition, Beatrice putting on gloves. He saw her typing the code. He saw her taking the stack of money and shoving it into her Louis Vuitton bag. He saw her placing the dossier on the desk and adjusting the note with a perverse smile. Lucas paused the video. The scream that tore from his throat was a roar of animal pain. He threw the glass of whiskey against the wall, shattering it into 1,000 pieces. No! What have I done? My God! What have I done? He had chased Clara out into the rain. He had humiliated her. He had expelled her. When she was about to give birth, he looked out the window. The drizzle had turned into a downpour, the same storm from the night they met. But now Clara wasn't safe in the annex. She was out there, in the cold, in danger, with his daughter, yes, because in his heart that girl was his, about to be born. Lucas grabbed his car keys, stumbling, blinded by tears of regret. He needed to find her. He would turn over every stone in this damned city. He would crawl if necessary. But as he ran for the door, the image of Clara leaving with her small old bag, the look of deep disappointment, hammered his mind. He had broken her, and maybe this time there was no fixing it. The night outside was dark, cold, and immense, and Clara had disappeared into it. The pain of regret is the worst kind, because it comes accompanied by the certainty that the fault is entirely our own. Lucas just committed the biggest mistake of his life, blinded by the fear of trusting. Now, Clara is on the streets, in imminent labor, and the man who swore to protect her was the one who pushed her back into the abyss. Can love and forgiveness survive such a brutal injustice? Where might Clara have hidden on such a cold night? Comment below with the word justice if you think Lucas deserves a chance to fix this, or unforgivable if you think what he did is beyond repair. I want to know, what would you do if you were in Clara's shoes? Would you take Lucas back after that humiliation? Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because the climax of this story will make you cry and believe in miracles. You won't want to miss the next part. The engine of Lucas's sports car roared in the underground garage, echoing the fury and despair burning in his chest. But before accelerating into the night, he had a score to settle. A score that didn't involve money, but honor. He sprinted back up the stairs to the main dining room, taking the steps 2 at a time. The restaurant was closed, the lights low. Beatrice was at the bar, pouring herself another dose of whiskey, a satisfied smile on her red-painted lips. She toasted her reflection, celebrating her small, petty victory. The loud bang of the door being violently opened made her jump. The glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. "Lucas?" she asked, trying to regain her arrogant posture. "I thought you were drowning your sorrows in the office. Did you come to thank me for getting rid of that?" Lucas didn't let her finish. He threw the hidden camera's memory card onto the counter. The small black plastic object slid until it stopped in front of her. "Thank me." Lucas's voice was low, vibrating with a cold, dangerous rage. "I saw it, Beatrice. I saw your gloves. I saw you opening the safe. I saw you planting that damn dossier." The color drained from Beatrice's face. The mask of the unshakable queen fell, revealing the fear of a small, cruel woman. "Lucas, It was for your own good. That woman is an opportunist. I needed to do something drastic to wake you up. The only thing you did was destroy the little humanity I had left," Lucas retorted, moving closer to her until she backed against the bottles. "You are fired. And more than that. Tomorrow, my lawyers will deliver this recording to the police. You will answer for felony theft, slander, and emotional distress. Get out of my restaurant now, and pray that I find Clara well, because if anything happens to her or that child, I will dedicate every cent of my fortune to ensure you never have peace again." Beatrice tried to speak, tried to appeal to their past, but Lucas's gaze was stone. She grabbed her purse, trembling, and ran out the back door, disappearing into the rain like the rat Lucas realized she was. But the victory over Beatrice brought no relief. It only heightened the urgency. Lucas rushed to the car. The clock on the dashboard showed nearly midnight. The rain was falling torrentially, turning the city streets into rivers of mud and danger. "Where are you, Clara?" he whispered, gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles were white. He drove first to the municipal shelter, a place he only knew about from news reports. The smell of dampness and despair permeated the air. Lucas, in his wet suit and Italian shoes, looked like an alien in that place. He described Clara to the exhausted volunteers, offered money for information, and shouted her name in the crowded bunk bed corridors. No one had seen her. Panic began to tighten his throat. She was 9 months pregnant. The stress of the expulsion could have accelerated labor. He returned to the car and started calling hospitals. One by one. St. Jude's Memorial? No. City General Hospital? No. County General Hospital? No. With every no, the ghost of Helena's death returned to haunt him. "I'm gonna lose everything again. And this time it's my fault." It was on the 10th call to a public hospital on the distant outskirts, a place where the city's elite would never set foot, that a tired nurse's voice brought a flicker of light. "We admitted a pregnant woman without ID 40 minutes ago, brought in by a patrol car that found her on the street. She was in active labor. The name she was screaming was Clara." Lucas didn't wait to hear more. He sped off, running red lights, ignoring caution, guided only by the instinct of survival. Not his own, but hers. When he arrived at the hospital, reality hit him like a punch. Crowded corridors, gurneys in the hallways, people groaning in pain waiting for treatment. Dignity here was a luxury item out of stock. Lucas ran to the reception desk. "Clara, where is Clara?" The receptionist didn't even look up. "Number? I don't have a number. I'm the father," he shouted, the lie coming out as the most absolute truth from his heart. "Where is she?" His desperation, or perhaps the impeccable cut of his clothes, made a resident doctor stop. "You're the companion of the woman who came in from the street? Come with me, quick." Lucas followed the doctor through labyrinthine corridors. "She arrived very weak," the doctor explained, walking fast. "Malnourished, with high blood pressure due to emotional stress. The delivery was complicated. We had to do an emergency C-section." Lucas's world stopped. Is she alive?" The doctor stopped in front of a double metal door. "Just barely, but she's strong. Both of them are." He pushed the door open. The room was communal, divided by thin, grubby curtains. In the last bed, near the window that showed the rain lessening outside, was Clara. She looked tiny in the high hospital bed. Her face was pale, her hair glued to her forehead with sweat. But in her arms, wrapped in a rough hospital blanket, was a small bundle that moved. Lucas felt his legs give way. He walked to the edge of the bed, slowly, as if entering a sacred temple. Clara opened her eyes. When she saw Lucas, her instinct was protective. She hugged the baby tighter and tried to move away, fear shining in her tired eyes. "Did you come for the annex key?" she whispered, her voice weak but filled with bitterness. "I already gave it back, Lucas. I don't have anything else." Lucas fell to his knees beside the bed. He didn't care about the dirty floor. He took Clara's hand, the same hand he had let go of hours before, and pressed it to his forehead, sobbing uncontrollably. "Forgive me," he choked out. "For God's sake, Clara, forgive me. I was a fool, a blind man. I saw the footage. I saw what Beatrice did. I know you are innocent. I always knew, but my fear was greater than my heart." Clara looked at the powerful man, the millionaire CEO, kneeling and undone in tears at her feet. She saw the truth in his pain. She saw that the man who had expelled her was not the Lucas she knew, but the Lucas wounded by the past. "You hurt me, Lucas," she said truthfully. "You doubted me when I needed you most. The street is cold, but your gaze in that office was colder than the rain." Lucas lifted his face, his eyes red. "I know, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to make up for that mistake. Not with money, Clara. Money can't buy what you have. I am here to offer you my loyalty, my protection, and, if you allow me, my love for this child. I don't want you to go back to the annex. I want you to be my family." The baby whimpered in Clara's arms, a small, high-pitched sound that broke the tension. Lucas looked at the girl. Clara hesitated for a moment, but then, in a gesture of infinite generosity, she pulled back the blanket so he could see. She was a beautiful girl, with lots of dark hair and curious eyes, still swollen from birth. "Her name is Sophia," Clara said, "because it means wisdom, so she knows who to trust." Lucas extended a trembling finger, and Sophia's tiny hand gripped it tightly. The touch was electric. In that instant, the last piece of ice in Lucas's heart melted. "Sophia," he repeated, smiling through his tears. "It's perfect." The reconciliation wasn't magical. Clara didn't throw herself into his arms saying all was forgiven. There were wounds to heal. "I'll come back, Lucas," she said firmly. "But not as a favor, not as a guest. I want to work. I want to study gastronomy, like I dreamed. And I only want my daughter to have your last name if you promise that never again, under any circumstances, will you let fear decide for you." "I promise," Lucas said, kissing her hand with reverence. "I promise on Sophia's life." In the following days, Lucas moved mountains. He transferred Clara to a private suite, hired the best lawyers to clear her name, and ensure the abusive ex-boyfriend was located and arrested, which happened 2 weeks later, closing the chapter of fear in Clara's life. Beatrice was prosecuted and fell into social ostracism, banished from the city's gastronomic circle. But the biggest change wasn't in the courts. It was inside Aureus. Epilogue. 6 months passed. Aureus was still the most exclusive restaurant in the city, with a months-long waiting list and award-winning dishes. But anyone passing by the side street, where the old administrative annex stood, would see a new golden sign, Project Nurture Culinary Outreach and Training. The space, renovated and expanded with Lucas's personal investment, was now a teaching kitchen and cafeteria. There, every night, pregnant women and mothers experiencing homelessness received not scraps, but high-end meals, prepared with the same ingredients served in the main dining room. And more than food, they received professional training. Inside the restaurant's main dining room, Saturday night was buzzing. Lucas walked between the tables, greeting regular customers. He looked younger, lighter. The weight of grief had vanished from his shoulders. He stopped near the kitchen entrance, where the new sous chef coordinated the plating. Clara was impeccable in her white chef's jacket, with the name Clara S. embroidered on her chest. She commanded the team with a mix of sweetness and firmness that made the kitchen run like an orchestra. She was no longer the frightened girl in the rain. She was a woman who knew her worth. Seeing Lucas, she smiled, a knowing smile, full of shared history. Lucas returned the smile and looked toward the small playpen set up in a secure, glassed-in area of the office, visible to both of them. Inside, little Sophia, now 6 months old with rosy cheeks, played with a rubber-teething toy shaped like a whisk. Lucas walked into the kitchen, ignoring protocols, and went up to Clara. "The last table asked to compliment the Sicilian lemon risotto," he said, speaking low near her ear. "They said it tastes like a fresh start." Clara laughed, wiping her hands on a cloth. "It's my grandmother's recipe. Peels that would go to waste, transformed into something precious." Lucas gently held her face. "Like us," he said, "two broken people who fixed each other." He kissed her quickly, a discreet peck, but loaded with love. "I'm taking Sophia home. Are you closing up tonight?" "I'll close. Will you leave dinner ready for me?" "Always. The best in the house." Lucas went to the office, picked up the baby, and settled her comfortably. Sophia giggled, recognizing her father, because a father is one who raises, who loves, and who stays. As he exited the front door with his daughter in his arms, Lucas looked out at the street. It was raining outside, a fine, persistent rain. But this time, the water brought neither fear nor solitude. It was just rain, watering the life that flourished inside. He looked at the dark sky and blinked, as if sending a signal to Helena, wherever she was. He knew she was at peace, because he had finally found his own. Lucas got into the car, protected and warm, knowing that true wealth wasn't in the bank account or the award-winning restaurant, but in the ability to reach out when someone knocks at the door and transform another's hunger into his own redemption. And so ends the journey of Lucas and Clara. From a painful encounter in the rain to a family built on forgiveness and second chances. This story reminds us that pride and distrust can make us lose the most valuable things in life, but the humility to ask for forgiveness has the power to heal any wound. Lucas needed to lose Clara to understand that she was his most precious gain. And you? Have you ever had to swallow your pride to save an important relationship? Or do you know someone who, like Clara, transformed scraps into something wonderful? Comment below with the word fresh start if you believe everyone deserves a second chance when the regret is genuine. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who needs a spiritual hug today. Thank you for following this story with us. Until the next emotional ride.